So it is my great honor to serve as chair of this afternoon's session. I'm Suzanne Kraft. I am the director of the Wake Forest Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And if we could put the agenda up on the, thank you. So as you can see, we have a really busy afternoon. We'll start for the first part of this session with our updates from all our great sponsors and collaborators. And then after break, we'll have our scientific session. So let's start off, excuse me, first with Dr. Amy Kelly from NIA. Dr. Kelly was appointed Deputy Director at NIA in September 2022, and she oversees the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and accessibility initiatives. Welcome, Dr. Kelly.
Hello, everyone, and I'm excited to be here. This is my first in-person ADRC meeting, and I joined you in October virtually, but it's just not the same thing as a crowded room of people working together towards big goals. By way of introduction, I am new to NIA. I joined this past September. By background, I'm a geriatrician and a palliative care physician. I just noticed in the agenda that I picked up an honorary PhD today, which is exciting, so thank you. I should have invited my mother to be here. But my research really focused on the intersection of older adults with serious illness, including dementia, and thought about the care experiences they had, what it was like for them and their families, impacts on finances, healthcare, a whole range of things, mostly including use of existing data sources in my own work. So I'm very excited about the work that you all do today, and I'm eager to even learn more as we continue working together. So I am going to give you just an update about NIA overall, and in particular related to AD-ADRD. And I'm going to first see if I can use the clicker properly. So by way of budget updates. So I think many of you are probably aware of the FY23 budget. So our appropriations to NIH overall were $47.7 billion for this fiscal year, and the budget came out early enough in the fiscal year for some good planning. You can see the breakdown for relevant initiatives for this group to know about, including the $226 million that was an increase for the AD-ADRD budget. For the first time this fiscal year, that appropriation was split between NINDS and NIA. We've always had a long-standing partnership with NINDS, so that is a pretty seamless piece of change in sort of how the money was targeted. And overall, this leaves NIA with a $4.41 billion appropriation, which includes a large base that actually supports our non-AD focused research portfolio as well. So it's quite a benefit for all four of our scientific divisions. This just lays out those appropriations year over year, and you can see that our budget has quadrupled over the course of a decade, and I think the advancements in the science really reflect that appropriations increase. This also translates into our pay lines. Here are the pay lines as they currently stand for grants that come in through CSR review. You can see our general pay line in the columns on the left, the AD and ADRD specific pay lines in the columns on the right. Notably and importantly, new investigators and early stage investigators have a bit of a bump in terms of the pay line to fund their awards, and you can also see the continued differential between applications that are over 500K versus those that come under 500K. For NIA reviewed, Applications, again, these don't have a percentile. They go by impact score, and you can see the scores there for funding as they currently stand this year. So to get into some specifics about AD, ADRD, and some updates for you. As many of you know, the retreats that we have every year are the place where we gather input from the scientific community about where we need additional research, what are the new concept areas we should be focusing on. And these come to our council for review and approval. This is the first of 2 slides, so I'll let you look those over while I make a couple overall comments. A wide range of topic areas that have been cleared by our council for concepts. As many of you know, that over time, these concepts, which we've flagged as being areas of specific interest, can evolve to become explicit funding opportunity announcements. So it's definitely something to watch out for. And every time we do have a new set of concepts that are approved by our council to move forward, we try to get them out to the community as quickly as we can through blog posts. So at the end of my presentation, I have a little reminder about how to stay in touch. But if you haven't signed up for our blogs, you should do that, because it's the chance to really get that hot off the press notice about some of the new directions that we're looking to fund. I also wanted to give you an update about a new funding opportunity for the real-world data platform. So this opportunity, which was announced officially in March, is something we're really excited about. It's a chance to leverage existing data sources. So as you can see on this schematic, ideas of pulling data from pharmacy chains, from electronic health records, from claims data, really a public-private partnership to pull data sources together so that we can leverage that to advance the science we all conduct, to do it more quickly and in more representative, more diverse, and more hard-to-reach populations. We had a webinar that focused on this initiative. A whole lot of the questions that came out of that webinar are online. There's a recording available. But it's really something that we are excited about as a platform that will advance our ability to conduct clinical trials and, again, have representative populations. So please share this announcement with others, connect with colleagues who might be interested, and we're excited to see what comes in for the application deadline in July. I wanted to spend a few minutes just giving you a sense of the landscape of the current clinical trials that we have ongoing right now. There's 459 clinical trials happening at this moment. I'm going to break these down by group a little bit so you can see some more details. 66 pharmaceutical trials. And what is exciting to me about these numbers is, yes, we have 7 trials in the phase 2 and 3 stage, but we also have a wide range of trials ongoing at the phase 1 and phase 2 stage. And as you can see from this slide, they're targeting a wide range of disease processes. So we're really excited about the diversity of these trials and what we might learn from them at that early stage. Also, non-pharmacological trials, 152, and again, as you can see, targeting a wide range of modalities. The other subsets of clinical trials are in our care and caregiving space, 210 trials. Again, by type and modality, you can see here a whole breadth of science happening in the caregiving and care arena, as well as trials focused on diagnostic tools, imaging studies, assessments, and treatments for neuropsychiatric symptoms. I wanted to spend a moment talking about our new clinical research operations and management system, CROMS. I am certain that some of you in the room already have some significant experience with this system. As you can imagine, as our appropriations have increased and our clinical trials have gotten up to the scale of many hundreds, we are really needing some additional tools for tracking of trials, for oversight of enrollment, for seeing more closely in real time how trials are doing on their recruitment, whether they're hitting their targets for planned diversity of their samples. And so not only is this a chance for us to provide oversight, but our hope is that it ends up being an opportunity to work with investigators where perhaps something's not going as planned. We might be able to help investigators find ideas about how to change course or different tools to help correct whatever the issue may be as well. So this is an ongoing development, but it's something that we're really excited about given the scope of the work we're funding at this time. And relatedly, this is a sample of the Senate appropriations language. Crohn's is an important tool for us to oversee the trials that we're funding, and one of the reasons this is important is because we're stewards of this large amount of public funding. And the Senate and the House as well, they are interested in asking questions about how this money is being spent and what's coming from it. So many of you in this room helped us respond to the three underlined questions on this slide that came to us with the appropriations language this year. And I do want to just give a big shout out of thanks to all of you who answered these questions and did so very rapidly. And I know that Nina is going to tell us a little bit more detail about what those responses were, how those data are being used, and how to share back the data you all provided with this community. If you haven't seen it yet, released last fall in November was our last progress report. It came out towards the end of the year. This year, we're shifting our timeline a little bit, and we're aiming to get the 2023 progress report out to you and the community by this summer. So keep an eye out for that as well. And of course, take a look online if you haven't seen this one. It's a great way to get a full overview of the science advances across many different research areas. I also wanted to just pivot to talk about health equity a bit. This is a top priority for us at NIA and NIH more broadly. I think most of you in this room are well familiar with the UNITE initiative, which started in 2020. This is NIH's commitment to ending structural racism, and each letter in UNITE breaks down to one of the committees that has a different focus on this work across NIH. You can see those goals are outlined there on this slide. But what you may not have seen yet, it came out earlier this year, is the first progress report on all of this work. And it's quite an impressive document. It shows us what's been accomplished and also highlights some areas of continued work and additional priorities. So again, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this, I would pull it up and read through what the UNITE program has already tackled. Another document, if you haven't seen it, that I think is a really important update for NIH is our strategic plan for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. This is a report that was released in late March, early April, and it reflects the plan for the next 5 years focused on DEIA initiatives. And as was mentioned before I came up, one of my priorities in the deputy director role is as our chief diversity officer, thinking about how NIA addresses some of these strategic priorities as well. So wrapping up, please do stay in touch. Of course, you're always in contact with your program officers and our staff, but sign up for our blogs, find us on social media. And I also would just highlight, share your information back with us. We love to see what you're publishing, when you have new data coming out, when there are new announcements from your institution about the work that you're doing. So do let us know. And with that, I'll say thank you. I think I may have time for some questions after my colleagues get a chance to talk.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Next up is Dr. Jenny Larkin from NIA. She is Deputy Director of the Division of Neuroscience at NIA and brings expertise in neuroscience, open science, and data science. She's active in data science, data management, and sharing activities across NIH. Thank you, Jenny.
All right, thank you. And it is wonderful to be here this morning, and I love the rec poster session. So I'm going to be talking about two things. First is the update on the Division of Neuroscience, and then I'll be talking some more about implementing the data management and sharing policy. And thank you again to Dr. Kelly for all her presentation. You already know, and we had the pretty picture of how much the NIA budget has increased over time. And this slide is showing the diagram of where and how NIA and the Division of Neuroscience are investing in a lot of these activities. And it's really building out the bench-to-bedside pipeline with a focus toward precision medicine. And again, that connects into what we've been talking about this morning. Precision medicine is really understanding the disease in different individuals and in different populations so you can diagnose it and treat the disease that is there. One of the things I also wanted to point out is that this is a whole pipeline of infrastructure supporting open science, and NACC and the ADRC program play a very important role, as you all know, but I'd like you to hear that from us as well, that the ADRCs provide data, samples, as well as participants to other studies, and that is super important. All right, now this is something you know, and no, I'm not going to go through the diagram, but I wanted to include it because it really shows how well integrated the ADRC program is across the AD research infrastructure that not just NIA supports, but that our partners support as well. And again, emphasizing what you've already heard, that the ADRCs play an important role. NIA leadership is very interested and engaged in understanding how your program is supporting research, providing the data, providing the participants and samples. And you've also already heard and responded to congressional interest in this as well. So we see your importance, and we enjoy working with you. All right, again, I think you know all this, but as part of the growth of the field, it has also been the growth of the division as well. So this is an organizational slide, and I'm going to warn all my colleagues right now. I would like everybody who works at NIA to please stand up right now, stand up, thank you, everybody. So one of the reasons we're super excited about having the program. All right, you can sit back down. About having the meeting here in DC this year is so more people could attend in person, and I hope you appreciated how many people came down in person. Others are attending virtually. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but please, the NIA staff are here to learn more about you and your program and your science. And here are we have 5 different branches now, as well as the Office of Strategic Development and Partnerships. We have also grown a lot over the last several years during COVID. So I think we're about twice as big now as we were at the start of COVID. So we have a lot of new and exciting people and their energy in the division. All right, so I just want to walk through just a little picture of the science that the Division of Neuroscience supports. And what you see here are really 3 different lenses or perspectives that we can use to understand the pathogenesis of AD, and they're not mutually exclusive, and they do interact. So one is to understand aging and the physiological processes underlying both normal aging as well as pathological aging. There's also the impact of genetics. As we know, more than half of the likelihood of getting Alzheimer's or related dementias comes from the genetic contribution. But one of the areas of increasing interest and investment by NIA is better understanding the environment. So about 1/3 of risk for Alzheimer's comes from environmental factors, and these include toxins and pollutants and heavy metals. But they also include a number of other behavioral and social factors, which is why we're so pleased that our colleagues from the Division of Behavioral and Social Research are here, because all of these factors intersect. So what I'm going to spend the next couple minutes is just walking a little bit through at some highlights of these different areas in DN's portfolio. So for in the aging, so if you look in the upper left hand, aging, that's how I remember things. So these are some of the recent and forthcoming programs focusing on helping us better understand aging mechanisms and how they contribute to AD, ADRD pathogenesis. I'm not going to read them all. You can look them up. Some of them are already passed, some of them are active now, and some of them will be forthcoming in the future. So Dr. Kelly showed you all the most recent concepts and initiatives. Some of these are recent ones, and some of them are already on the street, as I said. So that is some of the research we're supporting to understand the contribution of aging. And the other important one, and we are very lucky to have Lisan Wang here, he'll be telling us more about NIAGADS and the Alzheimer's disease sequencing program, so I don't have to spend much time now. But again, importantly, the expectation is by 2025, we'll have over 100,000 whole genome sequences from a diverse population to help inform our understanding of both the genetic and non-genetic bases of disease. Already, we've identified 75 risk loci and 20 genes, and there are a number of constituent consortia that are part of the ADSP program, but the AI machine learning to help manage and get knowledge from this data, the phenotype harmonization consortium that's working to make the data more usable to anybody who comes to it, as well as the functional genomics consortium trying to understand the link between the genetics and how it's really affecting disease. Going back to the therapeutic pipeline, because this is really one of the major efforts in the Division of Neuroscience, and again, that it is a pipeline that spans from the basic research, early target validation, assay development, things like that, all the way through translational to the clinical and preclinical studies. This was such a nice slide. I wanted to use it as well, but it's very important. And that's what a lot of the ADRC, too many acronyms, ADRC, your engagement with the clinical study and clinical trial activities that are going on are help supporting this, and we hope that will increase in the future. Okay, when you combine both the knowledge of genetics and the therapeutic pipeline, this is how we're driving toward precision medicine. So you don't just generically apply treatments to the larger population. The idea is to be able to target therapies, to understand disease, target therapies to the right people at the right time in order to have more effective and targeted therapies for those specific people. And that's what a lot of these programs are driving toward. And now we're going to segue into the exposome. This is, as I said, one of the growing interest areas at NIA. We've had workshops, and it's been highlighted in our summits over the years. But if you go to our recent proved concepts, you can see there are a number of exposome-associated concepts. So we're hopeful that these may come out as funding opportunities in the near future. And already in the past, we've had a notice of special interest, a NOCI, related to exposome. So please look in this space. And also, we believe that because the ADRCs are spread across the United States, that you may be very well situated to participate in these areas. And of course, if you combine both the knowledge of genetics with the therapeutic pipeline and the exposome, this can really inform precision environmental health. So it is the person, that individual person in their environment, in their life course, and understanding that to really target the best possible understanding of and treatment. Both primary prevention, how can we ensure people stay healthy, to secondary prevention, people who are subclinical in disease, how can we slow down the progression of disease? These are all important questions. Okay, and will it go forward? It doesn't like me. There we go. Whoa, go back. All right, so sorry. All right, segueing into the data management and sharing policy. I'll be here all day today as well as tomorrow. And I also know that Nina and Cerise are working very hard on this in conjunction with Grayson and Sasha to ensure that you have as much information as possible to ensure you're responsive. I'm going to walk through some of these pretty quickly. As you all know, there are 2 policy requirements. The first is that all competing applications need to have a data management and sharing plan, and if you're being funded, you must comply with the approved data management and sharing plan. This is a process of education for everybody involved, and we expect that the whole community will better understand how this is really implemented over time. So what I generally say is, don't worry about being perfect off the bat, do your best job. There are 6 elements to a data management and sharing plan. You have to say, what is the sort of data you're collecting? Are there any necessary tools or code associated with it? What standards for the data or metadata are you using to ensure it is potentially reusable by others? Talk about how you're going to preserve the data, how people will access it, what the timelines for that are. And also, this is an important one, identify who's responsible for actually managing the data and implementing your DMS plan. And it's okay to budget. We expect you to budget for your DMS plan. The format, NIH has identified a recommended format. It's only supposed to be 2 pages or less. Right? It doesn't need to be many, many pages long. There's a recommended format, and there are also a number of examples made available to you so you can see the different sorts of ways that NIH says are perfectly okay to fill out your data management and sharing plan. These various sample plans can be found on sharing.nih.gov. I just grabbed, there are at least 15 or so now. I just grabbed a screenshot of a few of them so you can see. They're coming from a number of different institutes. NIA is also developing some example data management and sharing plans that you'll probably see up there in the near future. Another important factoid is the DMS plan, it no longer goes in the resource sharing statement. Neither does your genomic data sharing. It does not go there. Both of those go into the Section 11, other plans, because as previously said, they're not seen by peer review, they're only seen by your program officers. There are a number of other resources out there. So for example, BMIC is NIH speech for the Biomedical Informatics Coordinating Committee. They have a really nice listing of data repositories and data resources. It's sortable, it's filterable, and for example, if I sort and filter it, NACC comes up as a resource and its characteristics. So if you're writing other grants and you want to find resources, you can go to the BMIC listing. The exact same set of resources is also available on sharing.nih.gov. They mirror each other. And one of the last things I want to say is, again, finding and selecting a data repository in general. So the first preference is always to select a data type or discipline-specific repository if it exists. So the BMIC listing is wonderful for this. NIHICs may also designate specific data repositories. So for example, if you're generating genomic data at scale, we suggest that you share your sequence data through NIAGADS. If you're doing multi-omics data, it's possible you might want to share it through the AD Knowledge Portal. NACDA is a wonderful place to share your behavioral and social science data. And of course, all the ADRCs share their uniform data set through NACC. There are other options, there are other solutions. So for example, there's generalist repositories, there are some PubMed Centrals, and other resources. One of the things I want to also remind you is a number of years ago, NIH released a notice that laid out the expected characteristics of a data repository. It's notice OD 21016. This one is important. It's really useful. So if you have any questions, well, I have a data repository I like to use. Is this okay? You can go there and see how well it aligns. Fun fact is I'm going to share data upon request from publications. That's not really a data sharing plan that is really very acceptable. Also, your personal laboratory website, unless it complies with most of the characteristics laid out in this notice, it is most likely not the best way of sharing data. Talk to your program officers working hard to find additional ways to help you share your data in ways to make it most useful, and so you get the most recognition for the important products of your research. And like magic, I have 7 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. Next is Dr. Nina Silverberg. She is, as we all know, director of the ADRC program at the NIA.
You guys weren't kidding about the lights. Ooh, okay. So I just want to start off with a thank you to many, many people. First, the steering committees that put together this fantastic program that we have here, and all of the presenters that have come in person and online. We appreciate all of you. NACC, obviously, who has done a fantastic job pulling everything together, and I mean everything. The clinical task force, who has still been working very hard, many years now, with actual products coming out that you can see at this meeting here today. I want to thank the research participants. I feel like I'm getting an award and thanking everybody, but I really do. And the survey respondents, we had multiple surveys, as we often do, and we do really appreciate your taking the time to fill them out. I know they can be sometimes annoying, but it's really helpful for us. I want to also thank all the NIH staff who came here and who make themselves available to you all the time. And we do have several non-NIH, non-center folks here. I don't know if anyone wants to very quickly stand up and say hello and introduce yourself. I can't really see, but if anyone wants to, feel free. We have Alzheimer's Association. We have Lewy Body Dementia Association. I haven't seen everybody, but no? Okay. Anyway, we thank you for being here, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the program and have so far enjoyed what we've seen. I wanted to make a number of highlights, but we have so much going on that there isn't really time to kind of go through everything, but please do try to attend as much as you can, either now or virtually later, if that works out best for you. And I do want to point out that there are a number of interactive booths out there by the registration, and I hope you also take the time to take a look at those. And we have our CTF staff, which, do we have stickers? No? We thought about putting stickers, but anyway, our CTF folks are going to be out there to help folks understand what's coming in UDS 4, so please do stop by there and take a look. So just to highlight, I wanted to thank again our REC scholars and our REC leaders for putting this together. I saw many, many people at the poster session. That's fantastic. And we're also looking forward to the mock study section coming up on Wednesday. Our last attempt at having a mock study section went so well that people were asking to please have another one. And so that's why there is another one. So I thank Brad Beauvais for bringing this to us to please have, which came from trainees there. And also want to thank Grayson Donnelly and Cheryl Spenceley from Wisconsin for really working very hard to put this together. So look forward to that. The Clinical Core also put together a data blitz, and that's available on Hubelo. So even if you're here in person, whether it's now or later, please take a look at that to fit with their theme of mild behavioral impairment and early neuropsychiatric symptoms. We're really happy to have that coming into the Uniform Dataset version 4. I think this is extremely important, and I'm glad we're having it because I feel like the way that we have been not measuring these symptoms in the past has affected how the field perceives them. And I think now that we're adding them, we're going to have a great opportunity to contribute much more important information much more broadly. So I'm pretty sure most people in this room have already combed through RFA AG 24001, but we just wanted to highlight for you some of what we picked up on the major changes that we thought would be meaningful for you all, starting with the almost 50% increase in direct costs. It's never enough, but we thought it would help. Much stronger emphasis on populations at greatest risk for Alzheimer's and related dementias. Staffing that is required for participant recruitment and engagement activities. You asked, we put it in. Time commitment for a requirement for core leaders. I don't think anyone asked for that, but we put that in anyway. The new imaging requirements, so requiring at least 24 participants to have MRI, amyloid, and tau. The plan for enhancing diverse perspectives. Budget requirements for cultural sensitivity and implicit bias training, blood collection, disclosure, sample tracking. We increased the budget and we specified some of where that should go. And NIH data management and sharing requirements, which Dr. Larkin just shared with you in more detail, and having all 3 rounds in a single RFA, which is at least a benefit for us, and I hope that you all will appreciate seeing in advance, other than the first round, what you have coming. And there are, of course, other changes that are not in there. One thing that, not related to the RFA, but we have been asked to inform you that we are not able to use our lovely badge that we implemented a while ago. Unfortunately, the Office of Communication and Public Liaison has just been informed this week that the current badges aren't really compliant with NIH and HHS policy, and so we really have to ask you to remove them as quickly as you can. Apologies, but we just found this out. We are going to try to look for ways to recognize the centers. Of course, you can say you're NIA funded with your grant number as always, but these badges are not compliant. There are a few NIH updates. I'm not going to go through these in detail. The slides will be available, but just keep your eye out for general application updates. There's extension of the COVID and what will be told to reviewers. There's our new term that we're all still getting used to, Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO, instead of FOA. So just in case you didn't have enough government acronyms, we went ahead and changed that one. And Cycle 1 awards will need to submit an interim RPPR in 2024 for your Year 5 progress. Dr. Elliott discussed this in the administrator program, in the administrator session, sorry. We want to be sure that you're all aware that there are these subawards available from NACC, and NACC has explicit instructions of how they're to be used and how they're to be distributed, but they have not been receiving invoices from some folks in a timely manner. And so we are going to be instructing them that they, at a certain point, and they will let you know, of course, but that they can rebudget these if they're not used within a certain amount of time. And so we hope that you will take advantage of them, but if you don't, they're going to go away. Similarly, we have some centers with very large unobligated balance, and as Dr. Elliott also mentioned, there are, when we do get administrative supplements, our leadership reasonably, I think, goes through and looks at what you all have available in your budget, and if there's a big balance, they want to know how you plan to use it before they give you more money. I think that makes sense, but just wanted to raise that to your attention. So as you're all also aware, I think we gave administrative supplements for neuroimaging to a number of centers, and we apologize to those who did not receive them. But we did learn a number of lessons. I think we learned, you learned, SCAN learned, the Imaging Steering Committee learned what the stumbling blocks have been. There are a lot of implementation challenges, and some were unique to individuals and others were across many, many centers. Obviously, COVID affected everything, but in addition, all of these other areas, including certifications and protocols and procurement delays, production failures, radiopharmacy limitations, scanner acquisition delays, just lots of different things, and we had Dr. Elliott kindly summarized all of them here very nicely. But I hope that, and I think that all of these challenges that we encountered, and you're sharing them with us and with SCAN and the Imaging Core Steering Committee, enabled us to have a better understanding of what's needed and hopefully improve the implementation moving forward. And if Clarity gets funded, it will certainly help with a large portion of these. Also wanted to, I sent this around by email, but in case you missed it, there will be a workshop on late and clinical detection of late. I know that some people in this room don't necessarily love the term or have some quibbles with some of the implementation, but we invite everyone to join the workshop and contribute your thoughts. Constructive criticism is always welcome so that we can do as good of a job as we can sharing with the wider community of what is known and what we still need to work on to understand this disease better. Condition, symptom, whatever you want to call it. Okay, furthermore, we have the CTF Technology Work Group that has been led by Rhoda O. and Sarah Biber from NACC and Rhoda and I sat down and talked several times and decided to restructure the work group. So we are now going to have 3 separate work groups, and we have spoken with the co-leads, although this has yet to actually quite get rolling in this new form quite yet. There's going to be one on in-clinic UDS digital instruments. And that's going to be led by Kate Poseen, Teresa Gomez Isla, Hiroko Dodge, and each of these will also have a NACC co-lead. There's going to be a standard UDS, but done virtually, and that's going to be led by Sudeshna Das, Zach Beatty, Melissa Lamar, and the NACC co-lead. And then the third group will be, or team, I think we're calling them teams, new non-UDS digital instruments. And we really do, for all of these, hope that whatever burden may be added, if there is with the UDS-4, that we'll be able to eventually, if not right away, try to reduce some of that burden by having some things happen at home, some things happen online, some things happen on an iPad while people are waiting. So trying to have some awareness of the burden on not only staff but participants and look for ways to better engage people in a way that makes the most sense for them. Next, I want to talk about the Clinical Path conferences. As some of you know, I used to be at an Alzheimer's center, and I thought that this was one of the best parts about it as a younger person, as an early career person. And I just really enjoy, I've been invited to several, thank you, of the Clinical Path conferences online. It was something nice that happened out of COVID, is that these are more available to more people now. And I think there's such a great educational experience, not only for the people within our ADRC community, but also hopefully outside. So however many of you were able to answer the survey we have a lot of ideas about how this might be implemented. I'm really excited to see it happen, but of course we want to make sure it happens in the best way possible. We want to make sure that, that the participants are valued and that their privacy is respected, and that that we are valuing their contributions to the science. And I do want to use it as an opportunity, though, to maximize our training and make available all of the wonderful expertise we have in the Alzheimer centers to the outside community. And so some of these may take planning and scripting a bit, but some of them, we may make internally available to, certain people. We're going to have to plan this out more. We got a lot of feedback that was really helpful about what we need to consider, and so we're looking forward to moving that forward. And I thank Dr. Liz Head and Claire Nelson. You guys were fantastic putting that together and summarizing it. The next two slides are some new, I say best practices in quotes because they're not generally what clinicians think of as best practices, but they're for our ADRCs on the NACC website, and now these two have been posted. Thank Emily Largent for leading this group. Talking about remuneration, offers a payment to research participants, following up on both the fall meeting, and there was a webinar on this topic that was also really helpful. If you didn't have a chance to see it, you'll be able to access that on the NACC website. But it's really important to be able to pay research participants and study partners, and we want to make sure that it's appropriate and effective for facilitating equitable research participation. So this document was developed to guide consideration of payment and payment-related practices for ADRC-affiliated research projects. And it contains information about functions of payment, how to design a payment, IRB approval and the common rule, taxation and benefits eligibility, and other legal considerations. They put a lot of thought and work into this document. Got some great comments. I really thank all of the group members. Everyone contributed, and it was done efficiently and quickly, and it is available on the NACC website for you to take a look at now. And then the next one is on disclosure guidance. The new RFA does say that there should be appropriate disclosure, and so this guidance is available: why to disclose, what to disclose, to whom, by whom, and how. And as Dr. Karlowicz mentioned this morning, he and Josh Grill led this effort, and I really do appreciate them and this whole group because this was also done very quickly and efficiently, and I think it's a fantastic document, and we invite you to take a look and give feedback. Also at this overall meeting, because of the focus on the theme of new therapeutic era, and because of the congressional interest in clinical trials and how the ADRCs contribute to them, and because this has always been important to us, we're working to try to improve the interconnections between ACTC and the ADRCs. I know that many of you are directly involved in both, but many of you are more peripheral to the ACTC. And so one of the easy ways that we thought there could be better interconnection is, at least at a minimum for training, letting each other know. When they have webinars, we tell them, and when they have webinars, we share that on our listserv. And this Impact AD program is a great training program for clinical trials. So for those rec scholars who are here or listening, you might want to check out Impact AD. And I also have on here tomorrow's session from the ACTC folks. I encourage you to listen to the session and speak to them if you're interested in clinical trials and you don't already have a connection. Be happy to make those connections. And they are seeking new projects, so we hope that the ADRCs will be contributing to the ACTC's projects. They are 3 review cycles each year: August 5th, December 5th, and March 5th. So you can take a look at the website listed there to see what they're looking for. Another bit of information I wanted to just share is just some example Spanish language materials. And I am really pleased to say that Alejandra Morlet is here. Oh, there she is. She contacted me because she's interested in increasing brain donation for Spanish-speaking individuals, and she's done a lot of work in this area. She's from the UCSD ADRC, and we actually ended up, because of her interest, using her, getting her to produce this video that's on the NIA website in Spanish and available. So I hope that all of you who see Spanish-speaking participants are able to access it and share it with them so they can learn about brain donation. And then another video that's in Spanish from our University of Washington ADRC, ¿Qué es la demencia?, is available on YouTube. I think it's a great video, and I think y'all should check it out. This one, I want to thank Grayson Donnelly, who did this terrific project. This is what we've been talking about, these tables. This is table E2, as I'm sure you're all familiar with. Underrepresented group events, publications, grants, materials, groups contacted, groups collaborating. You can see we get a wide variety of responses there. So some centers are reporting really large numbers of all of these things, and some are reporting very few. In fact, there are some that aren't represented there. Some, it's because they changed the format of the tables. So I think that this is illustrative. Nobody's named there. The numbers are arbitrary. If you're trying to figure that out, stop. But just to give you a feel for overall what we kind of get, and that we do look at them. And Grayson wrote a program to do this, so it's really cool. And we're hoping to be able to do more of this with a combination of what Ann Arthur talked about this morning, and REDCap and R, and it's all very exciting to finally be able to summarize these more easily. And I think this is my almost last slide. As Dr. Kelly mentioned, we had the congressional inquiry asking us about multiple different aspects of how the ADRCs contribute to serving the participants and providing information and connection to not only clinical trials, but giving people a diagnosis and sharing with the community what's going on, the latest in research. And so this is a brief summary of some of the information that came from that effort that Dr. Elliott showed this morning, that you all have engaged over 100,000 participants. So thank you very much for that. I know that's not a small amount of work. That the number of clinical trials this group of centers have brought people into is over 300 clinical trials for AD and ADRD. It's fantastic. So, and we all have registries with almost 500,000 people in those registries, so available to hopefully participate in future research. So thank you all for the survey. We're open to thoughts on how to get a better handle on this information. And last, I just want to offer my condolences to Dr. Marilyn Albert and the Hopkins community and their family. Guy McCann passed away recently. And also, I don't know if everyone here knew Murray Grossman. I actually knew him personally from family, friends, and otherwise. He's an FTD researcher at Penn, and they both will be missed. I'm past my time, but I did want to just offer if anyone wants to say a word or two. Okay, thank you, and again, condolences to those families.
And Nina, we'll actually have you stay up on stage and then welcome up Jenny and Amy as we're going to do 10 minutes of Q&A. So audience members, feel free to line up at the mics you see standing in the aisles, and we'll do some questions. Looks like we have a quick stand by Charlie.
So, Nina, thank you very much for going over the payments and to participants. And you've made one point about the IRB, and I've talked to Jason about our IRB, and we do a clinical assessment that we share with our participants, and we find that engages the community, and it's a way to give back. And we wanted to advertise that as our method, and it was interpreted as undue influence. And I just would like to hear, are there thoughts about that, and where this can be addressed on a broader IRB level.
Yeah, the document does address that in a lot of detail, actually. Is there anyone from the group who wants to respond in more detail than I can probably give? Is that Emily? I can't see very well.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy.
Thank you.
I would point you to the document. We definitely talk about undue influence. And just for folks who are thinking about this, right, it's the idea that somehow when we offer something to people that it will distort the way they think about participation in research in problematic ways, either causing them to underestimate risks or overestimate benefits in ways we think are problematic. So we do talk about it. I would say that generally speaking, if an IRB reviews a study and they say it's reasonable for the target study population, that we don't need to worry about undue influence because participating is a reasonable choice. Where I think things do come up is in advertising, payment, or other benefits, and there are very specific rules around that. So we have a citation in the guidance document to a survey on IRBs of payment, how we can think about ethically advertising benefits to participants, and that might offer some helpful considerations.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Morris from the NICC ADRC at Washington University, and just wanted to very briefly mention about the passing of Murray Grossman and Guy McCann. Murray, as Nina alluded, was a master clinician and really superb in the clinical diagnosis and understanding the clinical features of frontotemporal dementia. David Wolk from Penn is here, and he can speak more about Murray's contributions, but they were profound. This group is fortunately getting younger and younger, so people may not know about Guy McCann, who was not a ADRD researcher, but in 1984 he published a seminal article that for the first time gave clinical diagnostic criteria to understand something called probable Alzheimer's disease and possible Alzheimer's disease. Until then, people really didn't have any diagnostic criteria whatsoever. And of course, even Alzheimer's disease was typically not used, but terms such as senile dementia, senility. So Guy led a powerhouse group to, for first time ever, develop clinical criteria for the clinical diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And of course, he was the lead author on the 2011 paper that indicated updated criteria for Alzheimer's disease dementia. So even though he may not be well recognized in the Alzheimer field, his influence was really profound. So thank you.
We could take one additional question, otherwise we can transition to Bud.
Oh, please, let's not. I do have one question, Nina, and it has to do with the rather new emphasis on the ADRCs and clinical trials, which is very understandable, but I think there's some confusion among centers. I would say roughly about half of the centers do not allow their clinical core participants to participate in ongoing clinical trials, and about half do. And I'm wondering how you plan to sort of bring this together. It seems like there will be confusion at the level of review and all other kinds of potential for confusion.
Well, I don't have a response about review at the moment, but I do think, this has been the case for all along, ever since I've been here. Obviously, it's changing now with more trials and now FDA-approved medication. But I think this is going to have to be a conversation across the program, and we were hoping it would start officially sort of today with this meeting, that we need to have a better understanding of how the participation in these trials does influence the participants, and it's included obviously in UDS 4, what medications they're on, and we're trying to do a better job capturing if people are in trials, so that'll be in there. And I think we all do have registries, and so the registries can support clinical trials if for some reason a local center needs to not have people that are in their clinical core cohort participating in clinical trials. So I think for now we're still leaving it open and a decision, but it will have to be justified as always. I don't know if there's more to that, but that's how I see it.
Okay, we'll take the final question over there.
Thanks. First of all, I just wanted to thank both John and Nina for bringing up Murray. So I'm Dave Walk, director of the Penn ADRC. It's really sad that I think the second time in about 2.5 years I've had to come up here and talk about another real giant in the field. In both cases, people who had I had a real personal connection with, as did many in our center. As John mentioned, Murray made many fundamental findings within the FTD literature, and particularly related to aphasia. He was a neurolinguist, really kind of a traditional cognitive neurologist, but also someone who really studied brain behavior through all neurodegenerative diseases, and actually in recent years spent quite a bit of time with atypical Alzheimer's disease research, and has moved on into multi-omic studies as well. And I'll just say, I think Murray's greatest strength, and I think almost everyone would agree with this, was his incredible mentorship. No one was more committed to the people he worked with than Murray. Murray was always incredibly generous to myself, but particularly within the frontotemporal dementia disease community at Penn and beyond. I mean, he was just incredibly tireless in the amount of time he would spend with trainees. And I think it's reflected in the fact that the FTD Center, which we kind of work hand in glove with at Penn, has so many junior faculty, trainees, and others that are on faculty. I mean, it's a center that's as big as our Alzheimer's Center in many ways in terms of the staff and faculty, and that's really a tribute to Murray. So thank you, everyone, for your well wishes.
All right, that concludes our NIA Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks. And next will be Dr. Bud Kuchel, Director of NACC and Professor of Epidemiology at the University of Washington, with the NACC update.
Ooh, the lights. Well, thanks everybody. It's really nice to be here. One thing I'd like to do, a little self-serving, is really thank my NACC team for pulling all this stuff together today. And there's been a lot of changes at NACC over the last few years. We've grown a lot. We're doing a lot more things, and so on. One other thing I'd like to point out is the activity of Dr. Sarah Biber. She's been pretty tireless in doing practically everything, with lots and lots of committees, and with all of these things, including my slides, which don't have all the gimmicks that I used to have in them. And but just wanted to call out her great contribution to NACC and what that's helped us with, expanding and increasing our innovation and practically everything. And you'll see that tomorrow in our presentations, as well as a little bit here in the update that I'm going to give you. Okay, so here's a summary slide of just how many persons and publications and visits and neuropathology and so on that we've got in the database now. You can see the 34 regular ADRCs, or 33 regular ADRCs in dark blue, and the 4 exploratory centers in lighter blue in there. There's been about an average of 61% increase, or nearly 45 data requests per month that we fill at NACC. That's quite a bit when you think about it. And also over the last year, there's been a almost 14% increase in publications. So we're up to a little over 1,100 publications now that go through PubMed and so on. This is our modernization activity all the way from the clinical task force through the EDC work group to doing REDCap and so on for electronic data capture, to the ADRC steering committees, who are much more involved with the steering committees of all the groups, all the cores at the centers now, and then our efforts to establish what we call the data front door, where people can easily access data, not just from us and from the UDS, but connect it with other sources as well. Part of this today, we're talking about the clinical task force and revamping a little bit the UDS-4. The clinical task force has added things on social determinants. We're talking somewhat about digital advancements that you heard Nina talk a little bit about. We're getting better at including heterogeneity and gender and other clinical indications that I'll mention in a second. We've updated most of the forms so far, at least, well, the clinical task force has. They've been working on this tirelessly for quite a while now, introducing a couple of new forms, social determinants of health, that you'll hear about a little bit more tomorrow, and also one on ADRD-specific drugs, disease-modifying drugs, and so on, so we can keep track of that as well. And so we've got most of these in the works. We're bringing back for an encore Form B3, the UPDRS, the old UPDRS. And then we've got a few other forms that are still in some final revisions. This is a little bit about how we're adding this Form A4A, having to do with disease-modifying drugs, so we can keep track of who might be taking those. Also, the social determinants of health and the ADI, adding that as well. And also subjective cognitive decline, mild behavioral impairment, and also adding an optional verbal learning test to the neuropsych battery. And trying to be more inclusive in gender and sexual orientation questions and capture multiracial identities better. Wanted to say thanks to the clinical task force. These are the leaders of the clinical task force. They've been meeting, gosh, I don't know, every couple of weeks for about 7 years now to do to do these kinds of things. It's a really big job, but they're doing a very careful job. And someday we'll also have this implemented and built into our electronic data capture and our new system as well. Okay, so this is how we plan to do that. From the data will come through a REDCap system and into our new cloud-based data platform. Much of our existing data is already in the cloud-based platform, but we're building out the new capabilities as well. This is a little bit bigger picture, what we call this data front door, the current data streams that we have that you know about, the longitudinal UDS neuropathology and our what we call our legacy MRI PETs. And then also digital biomarkers, the electronic ones and so on that we're thinking about getting. We're also beginning to think about digital neuropath, how we might store that. We have another study ongoing to look at EHR capture and CMS as well. And then on the other side of that, how we're getting analysis and metadata from the ADGC and NIGADs, from SCAN, and from NCCRAD, so that you'll be able to contact that directly and make that a seamless, as seamless as possible way to get data on all these things connected to NACC IDs, which there's been a little bit of hiccups with in the past, but now we'll be able to also do that. Okay, so tomorrow, here's the schedule for tomorrow's 8 a.m. session. It's an early session. We thought we'd get you early in the day when you would be really awake, and have a lot more about all of the things that are going on at NACC. There's really very much going on at NACC. We're probably busier than we ever have been. And so also you can find out more from the CTF about what's going on with the revision of the UDS, and ask people if they have, if anybody hasn't destroyed their Ask Me About the UDS 4 buttons, you could ask them. So let's see, and you can also go to our booth and ask questions if someone's there. We've got most of this figured out, and most things are available, but yet we don't have a final date for implementation at the centers of these things. So you'll get a non-specific answer if you ask what the implementation date is. And that's it. I'm going to say thank you. And thanks for all the data that you send to NACC, because without that, well, we wouldn't have a job.
Thanks, Bud. Next, we have Dr. Tatiana Faroud, who's a statistical geneticist at Indiana University School of Medicine, where she is principal investigator of the NIA-funded NCCRAD and the NINDS-funded BioSen.
All right, so everyone's going to say it. It is blinding up here. All right, so, oh wait, I control this myself. Hang tight. Okay, so at NCCRAD, we tend to sit together, although Jeff is missing somewhere out there. So rather than doing this at the end, I'm going to do it at the beginning, and then you can kind of think if there's anyone you want to talk to. So I feel like I've come before as a one-woman show. I come with a group, and I just want to make sure if you're looking for some answers, you know who to ask. So if you go to the left of the diagram, both Jeff Day, Kristen Russ are leading our biomarker efforts. In the laboratory, you'll hear a little bit more about. Clarissa Staten is the one you'll be working with if you're thinking about sending samples. And Casey and Stephanie are both NCCRAD coordinators, really working with the ADRCs. And for those of you who want to know, where is Kelly? She's looming somewhere in Zoom, happily at home listening to us, sending others here. So she misses you, but not that much. So, all right, so I couldn't resist having some kind of a consort diagram. I've always wanted to be able to have one. I'm not going to talk about every box, but I'm thinking about this as our, how do we work well together? And so the benefits of NCCRAD and ADRC collaboration, and I right away put a little 1 there because it's not just with me. It's also with NIAGADS and NACC. So we used to show a 3-legged stool. This is like my 3-legged stool. So what I want to convey is just how far we've come. So we have DNA at NCCRAD for over 40,000 individuals that have participated at an ADRC. And for those of you who've been around as long as I have, we used to just say, could we centralize DNA? And what that could do for the field. And so what I want to give you a feel for is what's that done for the field, and hopefully what's that also done for the ADRCs. So first breakout is 36,000 of them matched to a NACC ID, and I spent a lot of time worrying about this 5,000, but I have an answer now that's going to make us all feel better. So 1,200 individuals, you know, we've got a process where you've got to be QC'd at NACC. That 3,700, a lot of them are MDS people. And what this made me realize is we've gotten a lot over the year. Do you know what an MDS is, the minimal data set? Way before you had a UDS, you had a different acronym. It was the MDS. So we've got people sitting over there that have ApoE and have GWAS, and I'm going to go around trying to make sure you all have that data. And if you don't, we're going to fill that in for you. So that's sort of the information on the right side. That's a lot of that over there. On the left, what I want you to feel for, I'm hoping, is the value, again, of banking with us. So what you can see is we've been able to return ApoE data, pretty regular clip we've been able to do that. You're also getting GWAS data. It's a process. We send samples on about yearly off for GWAS. So that slows down, but you're getting ApoE now on a quarterly basis, and just want to reinforce, I'm hoping that that's had a lot of value for the centers. So why do I want you to remember that? Because I want to remind you that we have a broader collaboration that we do right now, which we call the Alzheimer's Disease Center Fluid Biomarker Initiative. And that's really anchored on broadening and getting ready for what's going on in the field, which is a broader range of omics and biomarker work, trying to centralize samples so we can have the same impact that we had with genetics, also now with the growing technology. So again, a lot of centers participating in this. I showed this last time. You're an incredibly competitive group. If you don't see your name up there, you don't have as many as your friends. I want to just leave this sitting here for a moment so you can kind of look for yourself. And so what you can see is to participate in this initiative, kind of their entry to play is DNA in terms of a buffy coat and plasma. So what you can see, if I can jump over this, is about almost 4,600 samples have come in now in terms of buffy coat and DNA. And you can see, sorry, I got a tip up again, about over almost 1,000 people in terms of PBMCs, also see RNA and serum. And then, as I told you in the fall, some people, I'm very grateful to you, are calling CSF also a blood-based sample. I love it. And so we love getting CSF and are incredibly grateful to the centers that are including this as part of the initiative, because we get lots of requests for CSF. Anyone else wants to be in that column, please come see us. We would love to have more CSF. So it just gives you a feel. This is incredible progress for us. This is sort of where we've come. Launched this, talked about this in 2019. You can kind of see, now let me make sure you know what the bars mean. They look kind of bluish here. Blue is what we've received. Orange is what we're projecting is going to be coming. Now, sometimes we project and everyone looks at you and kind of laughs. I would actually argue, if you look at that trajectory, the orange to us seems very reasonable in terms of growth and what we believe is coming. And to make sure you see what it is, again on my tiptoes, it's nearly 12,000 visits that we're expecting by the end of 2024. We're already at about 6,000. And so it's incredible the participation we've had from the Alzheimer's centers in this effort. And I just really want to thank all of you and recognize now as I go through some additional slides the impact that that's having. Before I do that, though, I just want to acknowledge that there's some centers that participate in a little bit one-off way, and we're really grateful to them, and to get some of you to think perhaps I fit in this bucket as well. So these are centers that might have been collecting samples in some cases historically, so before we had sort of a standard protocol, but they're quite similar, or in some cases are collecting something a little bit different. If you have samples that you've been banking at your center that really are quite similar in this protocol, maybe they aren't the prospective, but you've got samples, we would welcome the opportunity. Again, we get a lot of requests for CSF, PBMCs. We're just looking to fill in and make sure we can meet all the requests that we have. Okay, so what are these samples getting used for? So first, I want to remind you again about that value proposition. So I alluded to the fact that we opened up a biomarker assay laboratory. It's not the only one around. We have a lot of fluid biomarker laboratories sitting in the Alzheimer's centers. Our approach is about being able to offer qualified, commercially available assays. Again, we really focus on internal qualification, lot-to-lot bridging. We're in this for the long run. We need to be able to give you results that you're going to be able to combine with results that you obtained previously. We also want to make sure that we're using the most modern, most needed platforms. Started on Quanterix. We're transitioning now toward Lumipulse for the A-beta assays. Also want to flag, because some people have asked, also have some qualification going on for CSF A-betas. So I know that might be of interest to some groups and perhaps will increase the amount of CSF that people might want to send. If you want to know more about how we're trying to work with the Alzheimer's centers, Jeff Daig is going to be presenting at the Fluid Biomarker Working Group tomorrow, 3:35. Just wanted to flag that as well, and he's going to go over how we're working with the centers. So just to give you a feel of what's already come out from the biomarker lab that we have run now almost 2,800 samples. We've started to have our first longitudinal samples. Really excited about that as well. And again, I've just shown right here what we're running. Again, Quanterix, p-tau 181, and the neurology 4-plex. Again, planning to do some, hopefully, transitioning over to LumiPulse. That'll get discussed at the biomarker working group tomorrow. Again, running these in rounds. You're going to get data back on a quarterly basis. Grateful to have 3 new centers that got data back. You didn't have them back in the first round. 19 centers now have had biomarker data returned to them. So incredibly pleased to see that. For anyone not sure how that works, we return it to NACC, just like the way you get ApoE and GWAS data. So we're trying to maintain that same flow of where you get data from. So just to kind of give you a feel of what's been happening at NICRAD, what's the types of samples, this is just showing to you in a visual view. So going from 2018, you can see was largely DNA focused, have seen really a significant growth in terms of plasma. What I wanted you to see is what's on the bottom, which is since January of 2018, 79 distributions working with samples from the Alzheimer's centers, 28 unique investigators, specifically for our fluid biomarker initiative, 10 investigators, about 1,600 samples, and we have a lot of pending distributions. So these are samples that people need for research, and grateful for you to be sharing that so they can be made available. And I don't think you get to ask me questions now. I think you have to do that later on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana. And next we have Dr. Lisan Wang. Dr. Lisan Wang is Peter C. Nowell Professor and Vice Chair of Research of the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine, and founding co-director of the Penn Neurodegeneration Genomics Center at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the PI of NICC.
Yes. All right. I don't think I sent you that long list, but well, thank you. It took 10 seconds, I guess, but I'll be quick. I'm glad to have this opportunity to share with you some of the data we're going to release in the next 6 months. And but again, NICC at a glance, we have many data and a lot of samples are from the Alzheimer's centers. We're really grateful, and like people use the data and make genetic findings. And one of the big things that Dr. Larkin mentioned earlier, and I'm going to talk a little bit more, is about Alzheimer's disease sequencing project. And as I mentioned last year in October, we released the release for whole genome data. It's a preview release that you have access to all the raw data, but we're still doing quality controls, and that data will be soon available. But we want to make the data available to a community. If you have data requests for an NICC, you have access to all these samples. And the current release has about 20,000 new genomes. Many come from the Alzheimer's Center. That brings the total to more than 36,000 genomes, a really valuable resource. And as you can see, there are a lot of samples between, now we have 20% of the exomes, 20,000 exomes, as well as 30% of the genomes are coming from the Alzheimer's centers. So thank you so much. And the other major milestone for the release last year, as I mentioned last year, is the harmonized deep phenotypes generated by the ADSP Phenotype Harmonization Consortium. PIs are Tim Holman, Mike Kukro, and Ada Toga. I saw Tim earlier, and I think it's a great time to talk to him about this data set. What they did is to work with different cohorts, collect additional deep phenotypes for the ADSP samples, and develop statistical harmonization methods so the results can be compared across. And you can imagine what a big challenge this is. It includes UDS, but other studies as well. So it's very high quality data. The first release has data, 3 categories of data from 8 different cohorts. And when we have a new release, maybe later this year, PhD is going to continue to expand the sample size and the cohorts and the type of data. I mentioned earlier, additional quality control data for the 36,000 genome release will be available either this or next month. That include quality checked genotypes, as well as structural variant calls from the genome. That includes indels, copy number variations. It's very computer intensive, so you don't have to do it yourself. We're going to provide quick guides as well as sample codes to integrate different kind of phenotypic data in the study. And there are additional auxiliary information such as population structure principal components that will be useful for your analysis. The other thing we're working on is actually bringing in new genomes. There's going to be more than 23,000 genomes new. The final number is not final yet, but this is what we have so far. That will bring the total number to almost 60,000 genomes. Well, we have a really aggressive objective. We want to reach more than 100,000 genomes in 2025, but I really think we can make it. And that includes 12 new cohorts as well as additional types of data from the Phenotype Harmonization Consortium. ADGC, in the meantime, is generating SNP array data. That's still the most economical way to quickly increase the sample size for genetic data. And there are different waves. And when these data are generated, and we perform quality control, but we return your sample to the Alzheimer's Center so you can use it, integrate with your own data, and through collaboration with NACC. And now, if all these are done, we'll have more than 30,000 samples with SNP array data from ADRC. So also, if you're interested in accessing all of these data, in addition to data from a sample, let us know. We'll help you apply and share the data. Here's one feature we'd like to highlight, and I think this is actually a really good example of collaborating with individual Alzheimer's centers, is we'd be glad to host additional data like developed by you and set up a page that really highlights and collects your data. And here's one sample where we work with NICE ADRC and especially a lot of collaboration with Dr. Carlos Cuchaga, who you all know. And the page looks like here. You have summary of the data, list of the data sets with sample size and data type. And at the bottom, we, of course, include the funding source and acknowledgments. We're working with 2 other centers, and I think this is something that you might find interesting. If that's something your center is interested, let us know. We can help you share data. Functional Genomics Consortium is another new component of ADSP. And one of the things that Dr. Larkin mentioned is the raw functional data is going to go to embed the knowledge portal. And we've been talking with Sage, Anna Greenwood, for more than 2 years to think about like how to link the data together, but in addition, how these data can be analyzed together, like make it a seamless experience. And that's certainly a challenge in terms of data sharing, but I think we can really overcome this. The other thing I want to highlight is that there's XQTO analysis is ongoing with functional genomics, and later the summary statistics will be available later this year. And as you can see, it comes from a lot of data sets that you're familiar with, valuable resources. So we run different kind of omics association across the genome to see what variants, how they affect the expression levels. So this is going to be an enormously useful resource. And we have a genomics database that some of you use, and you can view these things, link with SNP annotations and so on. It's going to be a really useful resource for the community. So we're very excited about this. One other thing I'd like to report is we actually recruited 2 very talented staff earlier this year that they're going to increase, do more of outreach and user support activities. So we plan a series of activities, including we always have a booth at AIC, and we're going to do presentations, office hours. And the other thing is, if you don't mind us visiting you or take us to dinner, we'd be glad to go to your center and present, talk about. I'm serious, yes. And yeah, so we'd be glad to talk to you about the data or meet your staff and tell you more about these data, and also get your feedback on, say, if there are particular features you'd like to get. And we're going to do this kind of things more with other events. This year, we're going to try American Society of Human Genetics, but we like to do more at major scientific events. Okay, this is the last part of my presentation. It's about increasing diversity. That's a high priority topic for ADSP as well as ADGC, and many of us are working hard on this. And this is a breakdown of the number of genomes that's going to be sequenced. It's a little bit out of date, but you can see the numbers close. And as you can see, there's still a lot of, there are a lot of things we've got to do in terms of increasing the total sample size for the other underrepresented populations, but we're closer, and there's more grants being funded, more studies, the cohorts being brought to sequencing. It'll be a valuable resource. So that brings me to the last slide. This is the ACAT Asian cohort for Alzheimer's disease. Many people here are part of that study, and we did submit an application. There's no funding yet, but we're optimistic about it. So we don't know what the final thing is, but what we put here is the next 5-year mission to recruit 5,000 people from the various Asian ancestry that we start with. It's a big challenge. This is the main message I want to say here. It's not possible without a lot of support from ADRCs and the ADRC investigators, and these are people we work with over the past 5 years to set up. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much. And we developed data packets that are based on UDS, and Bud is always on our call. Thank you for calling on Friday afternoon. I really appreciate it. But the thing is, you know that when you're doing things based on UDS, you know it has maximum compatibility and very high scientific value. So that's why we do this. And the other thing is we work with NACC to host the genetic samples as well as blood-based plasma sample. Again, they're going to do all the biomarker studies, so we know the data is consistent, it's compatible, comparable with other studies, and with NACC, that means we have the highest standards, and we don't have to worry about this. And one last thing we want to see is, with some of the Alzheimer's standards we're working with, we have co-enrollment, and we think this is there could be a way to continue to work with each other. So if that's something you're interested in, let's find time to talk. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
All right. We'll invite back to the stage Dr. Kukul and Dr. Farood for a Q&A between NCCRAD, NIGADS, and NACC. And actually, I did want to kick the first one off to you, Lisan. Rachel Wilson from Wisconsin asks, are the qualification data for the Quanterix assays available to view? And you can answer at the podium. Or maybe that's an NCCRAD question. Sorry.
Now, having not paid attention because you said Lisan's name first, would you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
Sorry, it came in while he was speaking. But Rachel Wilson from Wisconsin asks, are the qualification data for the Quanterix assays available to view?
Oh yeah, so we're looking where Jeff and Kristen are. We certainly can. Yeah, do you want to? Certainly that will be available. Yeah.
Please speak into the mic or repeat.
Here, I'll repeat for I think she's trapped in there. So Kristen's saying it's been presented at multiple meetings as part of posters, so we're glad to send that. No problem. Could you say the name again? Who asked for it?
Rachel Wilson of Wisconsin ADRC.
Got it. Somebody right. Thank you. All right.
Hi.
We'll send it.
Hi, Gil Rabinovich from UCSF ADRC. I actually have 2 questions for Tatiana. The first is thinking about CLIA grade results as we're thinking more about return of results to research participants.
You want to tell me the second one related, or is
Okay.
that we want to do them each? Are they related at all, or do you want to tell me both, or do you want to do them separately? Two different things.
I'll give you both.
Okay, give me both.
The second is around the assays, which are so quickly evolving, and whether how you and Jeff are thinking about this in terms of future assays. Will there be potentially results returned to ADRCs as new assays are developed from legacy samples?
All right, so let me start on the first one, and I'm looking at Jeff and Kristen. I'm going to want them to help with the second one. That's why I wanted to know both, if anyone wanted to get up with me. All right, so I think you've actually raised a great question, and I know I probably have some kind of time limit. So I with trepidation, want to address your question and actually broaden its scope. So I was looking at the best practices, and they're pretty biomarker focused, so let's start with that. but I think this also relates to genetics. So I think we really need to cover both. So I think when you return a CLIA result, I think we all have great confidence in that. I mean, those are laboratories that are set up. They know they're going to be returning results. They've run that sample. They've collected that sample with that anticipation. One of the things, and again, I've looked at it relatively quickly in terms of the biomarker description or the best practices is, I didn't see at least a lot of discussion around research sample versus a sample run in a CLIA laboratory. I think that's an important distinction, just as we all know it is in a DNA result. And I want to say this, as I say this, it's not that I doubt the quality of what we're doing, but I'm running research samples collected and designed for research results. I'm incredibly comfortable returning those results to you in the Alzheimer's Center. When we've had a mistake, we've made a point right away to flag that to you. We run a new sample. But I think when you're going to return results, I want to make sure that we're all clear that, again, it's a research sample collected with research results. And are we prepared for the appropriate caveats for that? I have a lot of concerns as potentially clinical trials will want to have biomarker results or genetic results to qualify individuals for them. That's not what these research samples were designed for, and I certainly don't want research results to be sitting in a clinical medical record. And so that's actually where I have some, if I can, so I may have ended up opening a Pandora's box in here, and this is probably not like the 3 minutes that we got to ask questions, but I think this is a real, I think this is a real challenge that we have, and you know, we're sitting here at NCCRAD going, do we need to start to put qualifiers as we return results to you so that we remove any liability that we have if you're thinking about using this in clinical return, and if there's been a, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a real distinction here, and I think we need to be careful as we want to return results to participants that we've thought our way through that. In most of the studies where I'm doing research samples and I want to return it, I collect a new sample, or I use a sample that's been independently collected before I return that. So I think this is part of the challenge. But I showed you results on 36,000 individuals with ApoE and appreciate that redoing all of that in a clinical environment would be incredibly challenging. So I just think there's another nuance that you've just flagged that I have concerns about, and I will admit selfishly, I've seen some of you nodding your heads in the audience as well, that I think a lot of us are sharing and trying to figure out how to interpret these results and how to implement them. So I didn't have a great answer for you. I think I've just shared that I think there's more discussion that needs to occur here, and maybe that's the point you wanted to make.
Exactly.
Is that exactly right? Now, to your second question. Right now I'm blinded and I can't tell if I, oh good, I've got Jeff there. Jeff, can I totally punt that one to you and you can talk about the fluid biomarker and what you're going to be discussing tomorrow?
Hopefully this is on.
Okay.
So it's really important to realize, and I'm glad you do, Gil, and I know you do, that it is a rapidly evolving field, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. But in the lab, what we're trying to do is offer the most reliable and robust, commercially available assays. And even that's changing now, and I'll describe how we're moving from one assay to another. And then what does that mean, and how do we deal with it? You know, and it's going to end up being, we're going to develop bridging so you can combine results. But if one assay is better than another as far as clinical utility, it's about your study, and are you willing to take the average as opposed to having the best-in-class performance? Because otherwise, you do have to rerun them all.
Right. I guess my question was, will you be adding layers as new biomarkers are available? So if we send you a sample in 2024, you know, will you be looking at some of the new or better biomarkers in that same sample as you start to use them in the lab?
Yeah. So we're converting the 4240 to LumiPulse. We're going to be qualifying the AlzPath 217 assay, and so as they become qualified, then we'll do some bridging and stuff, and then the new samples that come in get those next to your assays.
Thanks.
Chandri, South Texas, ADRC. So to build on Gil's point, I am a clinician as well as a researcher practicing in a place where a lot of underrepresented people, the worst insurance coverage in the country. We collect CLIA certified samples. We send them to Quest, we send them to other people. So I think I agree the custody, the chain of is most important for CLIA tests. But I would urge that we try to build that into NACC, at least in centers that are willing to collect samples the way they do to send it to CLIA certified labs, whether it's for CSF or whether it's for ApoE, for instance. It is incredibly uncomfortable to have that information and then not be able to release it to somebody who feels that it's very important to them and they have contributed to research.
I'm trying to think. So I don't disagree with anything you've said. I think the decision we have to make is, right now we're able to provide this and we run it as a research sample on all samples we receive. It's sort of a given. We're running it on everything. If our goal is to be able to provide a clear result, I think we'd have to think about the laboratory in which we're doing it, and we can certainly coordinate with that. The question will be, can we literally afford to do this for all participants? I mean, I think it's a significant cost. I just want to be honest about that. I think then the value proposition that I just talked about, everyone's going to get ApoE, I think that will potentially have to change. And that's a road that we'll, I think, have to have more than a minute and a half of discussion. And so if it's a direction that NIA want, we just need to have further discussion around. But it'll then be, how do you prioritize, as with everything, a limited resource? Doesn't anyone have a question for Bud and for Lisa? Come on, you guys, give them a hard time too.
I actually do have one from the virtual audience, this time for sure, for NIAGADS. Let me just get back to it. So what are some approaches that are necessary to see a significant increase in diverse, for example, ancestral AD genetics data, based on the data shown from Dr. Wong earlier related to the ADSP FUS, African Americans represented in the lowest data set?
I want to say that these things do take a little bit of time. You have to develop the cohorts and figure out the funding. There has to be a peer review process. So I don't know about details, but what I see in the trend is there are a lot of investigators working to develop new cohorts, and some of you here are probably a part of that study. And I think, keep our fingers crossed, but things will happen. I'm very optimistic about this. And the page you saw earlier that is on the ADSP website, we're going to continue to update the sequencing progress, so people will find out as how the samples will increase. But it's a lot of work. After all, there are challenges you need to do so the assessment is appropriate for the population you're looking at. It does take time, so we do it right, but it is happening. There's strong momentum. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if program officers can comment on that as well, but yeah. Oh, time's up.
All right. We're going to transition then, unless there's any more. Nope, not seeing any. Thank you all. Just stand up. We're going to be having some award announcements for the new investigators and REC. So REC folks, if you're in the audience and hear your name called, please come to the front. We have a certificate for you.
All right, yeah, this is exciting. We'll start off with the New Investigator Award. Should be a slide. So as we are all aware, this new program that NACC has developed in which new investigator, I can't do that and talk at the same time. The New Investigator Awards have been highly competitive. It really has just been so exciting to see all the great work that's coming out of the junior and new folks at our centers. And this year we did a bit of a different, we had two tracks, one of the mainstream research tracks and then a diversity equity and inclusion tracks. So here are the winners of the 2023 NACC New Investigator Awards. From Duke, UNC, Michael Deviney, Dr. Michael Deviney. In the traditional track, proteomic determination of complement activation and postoperative delirium. Congratulations. Is Dr. Deviney with us today? Okay, awesome, great. And then in our diversity, equity, and inclusion track, Dr. Shay Andrews from the UCSF ADRC. Evaluating clinical and polygenic risk scores for AD in diverse populations. And each of these is a grant totaling $135,000, so not too shabby. So we're very, is Dr. Andrews with us? No, okay. Well, congratulations, I hope he's online. Congratulations to both of you. All right, and then next we had today, by all accounts, a really exciting poster session, rec poster session. And so 2 rec rising stars have been selected. These were voted by the attendees of the meeting, and each awardee will receive a $1,000 stipend provided by the ADRC Rec National Steering Committee. Okay, so first is Dr. Jessica Finley of the Michigan ADRC. And Dr. Finley's title was Cognability, an Ecological Theory of Neighborhoods and Cognitive Aging. And here, absolutely. Congratulations. And second is Dr. Ann Wen of the Cleveland ADRC, and her poster title was Social Network Typology and Cognitive Status Among Black Americans, Findings from the Health and Retirement Study. Congratulations, Dr. Wen.